Jordan, I think you can do it in 1 minute. Excellent.
Oh man, I'm loving the parallax stuff.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, you will have that out there.
The question is if I can get a reverberating sine wave.
Yeah.
Do the wave with yourself.
Yeah.
Alright. I can't even see the time. Whatever. Alright, I guess do we start then? Alright, yeah. We got 1 minute. It's 10.
10. Oh yeah, does Hangout record a particular screen or like everything? Your class.
I'm going to start broadcasting. I'm just going to have it like this so that if I have to walk in front of the screen, I'll just try to start.
Oh, okay, because the screen will be behind you.
The idea was we were taking Sister to supplement with that camera. But it was
Okay.
turned on.
Yeah.
Just in case you don't see the screen, I can also.
Yeah.
You gotta move Hangouts over there so you can stare into people's eyes.
Yeah. All right. I'm inclined to start then. So we'll go ahead. Hey, I'm live. Up to 8 hours of me talking. I'm so sorry, man. All right. Cool. So, my fireside chat today is on negotiation. I find this pretty fun for a couple different reasons. One, because you can save money. The other one is because it's fun and you feel like you're kind of outwitting people, but at the same time you're getting something for yourself and hopefully like bettering a situation. And then also just because there's a lot of cases in history where you can find cases where like negotiation passed or failed and actually had some pretty significant repercussions. So I think it's a pretty interesting skill to at least be aware of and kind of think your way through. The cool thing is, I guess, part of the chat today is to kind of convince you that it's not necessarily a like me versus them mentality. In fact, you should almost always go into negotiation as kind of a little bit of give and take, but more so like expanding the pie. Like you should be able to come to an agreement with rational agents that is mutually beneficial. And I think that in most cases you can absolutely do that. So I'll go through some different examples towards the end, but to start we'll go through some of the theory of negotiation and some fun quotes that I like. So I like this. I've heard this many different times. Some people would say that this is, I believe it's Irish diplomacy is the other way it gets quoted. So this is actually not what you're supposed to do. You're not really trying to trick people in negotiation. You're not really trying to like schmooze them up as much as people would have you think. But it's a fun quote, and I have to include it sometimes. So but a far more useful explanation of this is actually this video that we will start.
Now you telling me that's not worth 20 shekels? No. Look at it, real quality.
history, people negotiated just a part of like normal life. You would go to the market and you would go and you would talk people down because you're buying avocados or whatever. Or you'd go and you'd be, I don't know, trading sheep and you'd talk. And so for the longest time it was all barter economy, right? So negotiation was kind of just a fact of life. And what's interesting is we've kind of shifted away from that, and that I guess day to day most of you don't consider yourself to be like in negotiations, which is kind of odd. And some would argue, hey, great, we like got to a point in society where I can just walk in and buy a cucumber for $8 or whatever, and not have to talk to anyone. That certainly increases your like time efficiency for certain things. But in other cases, we've not done that. So Tesla's getting really actually fought right now for trying to just direct sell you a car, right? Just price car, yay. And instead, we're still stuck in the point where you actually do negotiate for a car. In other cases, you like negotiate for real estate. And there are a lot of different cases where that can be your advantage, but at the same time, you find yourself in weird places where you have experts who do this as a job, negotiating with you. And because you negotiate less often than they do, and certainly less often in that domain, you can be at a disadvantage. So we're trying to walk through some ways of structuring a negotiation like strategy and other things to keep in mind as you negotiate. Because the times you do, as in the case of cars or real estate, it's actually going to be kind of important, and you're going to want to know how to structure yourself. So the first thing to memorize, or at least think about, when you do a kind of negotiation sprint, you really need to know what you want. I think there are a lot of people that you feel like, oh, I can't please this person, right? Those people don't do well in negotiations because they can't accurately articulate what they actually want. At the same time, someone else who's trying to accurately negotiate has no clue what they want. So like, what are you supposed to do? Let's just get into a room and talk about a car for a while. That's really hard to do if you don't actually know kind of your parameters of success and what you would find useful, what you would want to be able to come out of the deal with. And so you really have to think about that. Another common thing that people think about is having a goal. You can have a really rigid goal. So like, I want to leave with this car at no cost, or not cost, like at any cost, right? That is a goal, right? But is that actually what you want? So kind of making sure that you also leave it open so that you can change it during negotiation, but not too far so that it's actually useless to you. And then the last thing, a lot of us think of like, hey, must-haves versus wants. That's a good way to start, but realistically, you'll get to the negotiation and it's the whole like no plan survives first contact with the enemy, I guess. And that's been bastardized by a bunch of marketers and stuff, but it's really true. Like, you're going to have to change during the negotiation, so a lot of this is quick thinking on your feet. But the good news is you can mentally prepare yourself by just kind of thinking about it and thinking about things beforehand and being ready for what you might see. And that leads us to the preparation. So the sad part is you will always be in a case of information asymmetry nowadays. For the most part, you go and you talk to a car dealer. The car dealer has sold more of these than you will ever buy in your life in about the past month. So this person does this for a job. They are very good at it. They know triggers. They know general profiles of people. They're able to take and they're able to like articulate things. They're able to go play good cop, bad cop, and all of these other different things. And they're actually able to really kind of structure it because their job is to sell you stuff. They're getting really good at their job. So your job is to kind of learn as much information as you can, not necessarily to negate the fact that they have power over you, but at least to even it out so that you have more than the other people they might be talking to. And regardless, it'll be a better situation for you. So this is a good case of information, I guess, as a tool. You're trying to get information because you can use it in negotiation. So coming with, like for our car dealership example, coming with quotes, coming with things that you can go and say, yes, you say it's worth this much, but in reality, all of these other people only pay that much. Or like in a salary negotiation, coming with actual like similar in the area job titles. I think Jim's done that a couple times. And it's like, you kind of got to do your research, but at least you come and you say, like, that's obviously not the case, or at least like, that doesn't match what I think the current situation in the market is. And no matter what negotiation you're going into, or just in general, it's really smart to have information. So make sure that you spend the actual time before you go and meet with a professional who's doing this for a job to actually kind of be prepared and get ready for it. Next thing would be attitude. I like this saying, calm people live. It's pretty cool. I think it's actually incredibly accurate. And I kind of agree with this just in general, not even negotiation, just in general about life. There's very rarely times where like losing your cool helps. And there's also rarer times than, I guess, a negotiation where that can really hurt you. Especially like we're talking about buying a car, great. but what if you're negotiating like hostages, right? Or what if you're negotiating like a peace truce? All of these things are very, very high value things, and there's almost no value oftentimes for you becoming emotional. There are certain cases where you can use emotion to try to reach a common goal, or you can certainly try to kind of convey a level of empathy by understanding that there is a common goal between people. But for the most part, you want to be in control of it so that you can articulate a position that is backed up by emotion, as opposed to letting emotion kind of steer you. So pretty much, there are other problems with losing your cool. You'll kind of forget your plan and your goals, right? All of the stuff that you've done research on, all the things that you've tried to figure out, you just won't remember. You'll get really kind of easily swayed by people if you're not kind of staying calm. Another example of this is what people who are selling cars or people who are selling real estate do, right? It's like as soon as you walk into a house and they see that you're sold, right? It's like all of a sudden they get a lot less, like more apt to negotiate with you. There's just no reason, right? Because they've seen that you've emotionally bought into it. And the other thing it does is kind of remove a filter. If you are too emotional about something, you don't think before you speak. And that can be dangerous, not necessarily like life-altering in many of these different cases, but you still need to make sure that you don't like off-rail an entire discussion just because you kind of blurted out something. I think a good example of this is being accusatory. If you get mad and you start accusing people of things, as in the case of a job today, or a job like comparison. So you go in and someone offers you like, hey, I'm going to give you $40,000 a year to be a burger flicker, right? And you can, if you know that like you have a bunch of different jobs that, hey, this guy's paying 45, this guy's paying 50, right? So that's paying 60. And you can say, hey, so I'd be interested in figuring out why you got that figure, because it would appear to me that the other comparable places in the market are paying X, Y, and Z, right? So that's a non-accusatory way of actually approaching the situation, as opposed to, well, that's just not true. Like, why would you pay me that? Like, you're ripping me off, right? And so there's two different ways that you can approach it. And there's one of those is being in control of your emotions, and one of them comes from a perspective of trying to understand the other person's position. And the other is just accusatory and generally does not get you places, with some caveats. The most important thing that you have, unless you don't, is walkaway power. There are cases where you have walkaway power, there are cases you don't. Walkaway power is a perfect example of a car. Most people will like buy a car in like, I think it's like 18 days or less. It's some really low number from like, I want a car to I have a car. I mean, I gave Aaron a really bad rap about this, but he went from like, I want a desktop to I have a desktop in like 11 hours. So is that really like a good position for you to be in? Not necessarily. So if you have it, you should certainly try to maintain your walkaway power, because it gives you the ability to kind of remove yourself from the situation, to go back through facts, to go think things through, and then to better articulate your position if you go and interact with that person again. Or just look around for a better deal. You can easily go, and I'm trying to buy a car for 12 grand, right? But it starts at 20. If I go and talk to one person, I get it down to 18. I'm like, okay, cool. I go to the next person, I try to get down to 16, right? And I just keep trying to lower it down, right? Walking away from every offer. And then I just go back and say, you know what, I couldn't beat $14,000. I'll take it for 14, right? So all of a sudden you've been able to remove a lot of the let's get stuff done now, because now is the only interaction that I'll ever be able to buy a car in my entire life, to instead, you know what, I can wait a couple days, I can figure this out. There are times where people will waste your time, almost just, not really be jerky, but it is a sales tactic. This actually happened to my mom once, I think. So she like calls and says, I want this model SUV with these many features, right? And she calls a car dealership. The car dealership will just say, yeah, we have that on the lot, right? She goes to the lot, and they don't have it, and they start directing you towards like all these new, like, I don't know, Jeep Grand Cherokees, and you're like, no. So she just walks away, right? Obviously it ticks the people off. It's obviously a very like skewed answer at a very odd situation, because they don't generally outright lie to you like that. But if you get the sense that people are just kind of dragging you along, you can also use this to move things around. So if you're a customer walking out of a car dealership, the odds are that they will never see you again before you buy the car, because of that 18-day conversion rate. So they have a large incentive to make a deal as long as it is profitable. That said, they also wear you out if they're longer. So they're balancing like you not leaving before the end of the day and you buying a car, but staying long enough that they can like actually get you to buy the car. So this is again just something to keep in mind, and it is a way that you can kind of exude control on the situation without too much work. And then finally, we'll go over some strategy. So this is a good example of not having walkway power. This is Israel. Israel can't be a walkway. I couldn't really bring up any good examples because they're very politicky. But there are some really, really good books that have been written about just really good negotiators in the past century. And one of them is actually talking about how they got the Camp David Accords to work. Those were the pretty much just battery of kind of treaties that they went through and they tried to articulate and form while they were actually at Camp David under, I think, Reagan, I believe, but I'm not sure. So it was a good case of everyone's kind of hostile, right? There's a lot of like old history there. There's a lot of drama, and at the same time, no one has walkaway power. So it's like we either like leave here still at war, or we stay here not at war until we find a way to not be at war. So you kind of have to balance the whole like wanting to get out of the situation and wanting to maybe come to a resolution, but also understanding the consequences of failing. So in the case of like failure being, hey, we're still at war, it's a pretty big deal, right? That's not to be done lightly. The good news is, hopefully the other people know they're still at war too if you both leave. So at least it's kind of even. That happens occasionally where you, and actually oftentimes I guess, where you have differing levels of things that you can lose. So if, in the case of like a car dealership, right? It's like, I don't really lose anything if I walk out. The car dealership doesn't necessarily lose much, but they certainly lose the ability to treat a paying customer. But there are other cases where you'll have like a banker with a loan, right? And you're a small business, right? Banker could care less about you. There's no risk of bank walking away because there are so many people looking for loans. But for you, that might actually be a really big deal, right? It might actually be a pretty important thing that you can't necessarily pass up. So depending on your available options, you will know kind of where you fall in the hierarchy, where you fall in kind of the social frame around a conversation. And then you can hopefully either leverage that or at least mitigate your losses as far as understanding that you're at a disadvantage. Whoa. There we go. This comes up to master weaknesses. So this was actually a really, really good example. Was Drew with his Boeing offer. So it is much easier to go look for a job when you have an awesome offer, right? So if you think about having something that you can take and you can kind of, worst case, I'm winding up with Boeing. Worst case, I'm going to Microsoft, right? As opposed to worst case, I'm going to McDonald's. It's a very different thing. So knowing that you have something to lose, or knowing that you are at a worst case in this situation, also gives a certain aura of calm around your negotiation. Because if I know that, hey, worst case I can get this interest rate, or worst case I can get this deal of a car at this other dealership, right? I all of a sudden have a lot less interest in staying or wasting my time or having to force a situation to actually come to something at the present moment. So this also helps you kind of be in control, and it helps you not appear needy. I think a lot of people get into the case where you are looking for a job, right? And you've like been out of work for like 3 years now, and you don't have anything. You know in your back of your head, you're like, please don't look at the just absolute blank 3-year state on my resume, right? And all of a sudden you start to look a little bit needy, right? And then that cascades into your diction, and that cascades into how you present yourself. And so that kind of erodes away not only the intelligence of your argument, but also the state that you appear to be in. In the case of like a job, it probably means that they won't necessarily hire you for that because you just look like you're not ready for it because you haven't really prepared, or you don't look like you're professional at the time. In the case of other things, it can mean you just don't get as good a deal on something, or it means that you would trip up in slightly other different ways. But it's just important to kind of keep that in mind so that you know what options you have and you can frame your discussion around that. And then finally, another thing that I'd like to bring up, and this is one of the less talked about, I guess, ways to approach negotiation, kind of conversation in general. If you go into, actually, here's a good example. Putin is a very good politician. He effectively is playing chess while I would argue a lot of other governments are playing checkers, especially Middle East. So interesting guy, very, like I would say pragmatist, I guess. Formulates a goal and necessarily follows it. And a good example of that is his situation for like the Middle East is, hey, we need a regime that is stable with Assad in power, right? So all right, we can kind of see how you could come to a situation where you could support Assad, they would be in power, and that would be relatively stable. That's effectively what we did with, like Saddam Hussein back in the 90s. The contrary opinion that I believe, like John Kerry has expressed for our government, is we want a non-secular, democratic, and stable government for these listed countries in the Middle East, right? So is it really feasible that we'll have a non-secular government there? Probably not, right? Is it really feasible that it will be democratic at the given time? Probably not. Is it really feasible that we'll be able to do that in multiple countries in the Middle East? Probably not. So you kind of have to think about whether or not your goals are really reachable. But that also lets you know whether or not you can come to a situation where you can invent a solution. So in the case of Putin, you might be able to come up and invent a solution. But if you are very careful and you're like, no, it must be non-secular, right? Or yeah, excuse me. It must be like non-religious. It can't be based religion. Then all of a sudden you kind of lock yourself out. There's not really a way you can negotiate on that. So making sure that you frame it in a way that you can actually come up with a solution is useful. I think the best like classic kind of cliche example of this is like two people fighting over an orange. You get people saying, I want this orange is mine. No, that's my orange. And you kind of have people bickering back and forth. And then the way it goes is they like split it in half, and then they each get half the orange. And then like I'm busy just eating the orange part of the orange because I want the orange to eat. The other person's busy just throwing away the orange part of the orange because they want the skin to be able to bake a cake, right? It's like, so you never really bothered to actually take and try to empathize and understand the other person's situation before you enter the negotiation, to actually realize that, you know what, we could get like all we want if we actually just sat here and talked about it. And so the whole concept that you're actually going into a situation where you don't know what the perfect outcome is. It's just impossible to know the perfect outcome. But you also know that there are things that you can make better, and there are things that you can work to agree on that would eventually result in something that's more optimal for both parties. And kind of keeping that open-mindedness, keeping that kind of non-emotional, very like removed and yet kind of analytical aspect to holding a negotiation is a great way to allow you to unbox all of those options. Because again, if you're bickering about an orange, you're not going to have the chance to actually talk about like, why do you want the orange? What do you actually see this being, right? What are you actually looking for when you're doing a foreign policy decision, right? Are we looking for people to not have nukes? That's very different than looking for people to have good human rights. That's very different from like toppling a regime, right? All of those are very different things. So what do you actually want? Do you want security, right? Do you want this, that, the other thing? Do you want economic prosperity? And all of a sudden, as you come to like abstract away the actual motives behind what you want, I think you'll find that the other people are oftentimes rational agents and want the same things you do, right? Who kind of argues against security, right? Who kind of argues against economic prosperity? So all of a sudden, you can take and say, okay, so if we both really want this, how can we compromise to get something that is more in line with that goal, instead of all of these kind of proxy wars we're doing about specific issues that aren't really necessary. And that's a good example of like historical cases where you just didn't realize that. It's like, I didn't think about that. And then everyone's like, this could have been perfect. We could have spent so less time on it, and we wouldn't have gone to war or whatever. So the other thing you'll find is if you at least follow some of this stuff, you will oftentimes be more prepared than the other person. Maybe not in the case of like a real estate or a car negotiation. But just because the other person gets emotional, or just because the other person isn't necessarily as analytical, does not negate the ability of you to improve the situation. So this comes into trying to actually empathize with someone. If you are trying to empathize with the person across the table and understand what they actually want, what their motives are, even if they don't necessarily like, even if they aren't forthcoming with like, this is what I actually want, right? You can start to at least frame your conversation in a way that would be more palatable to them, right? And so you can actually go through and kind of try to figure out a way that even if they're a little stubborn, you might be able to suggest something that they really wouldn't find that bad. And because you will oftentimes be, especially with all of you being incredibly intelligent people, you will find yourself to be more in that capacity than the other person a lot of the time. And so a lot of the responsibility for trying to find an optimal outcome lays on you. And that's also because you'll get something out of it, right? By being able to do that, you're oftentimes able to come out with a more optimal solution for yourself, in addition to helping the other person. And not making it enemy who might come stabbing you back. It's always nice. I think I kind of went over this. Yeah, so what other options would they entertain? So this is a good example of doing your research beforehand. All right, so I'm going to negotiate a starting salary at Microsoft, right? So I go through and, okay, we have tiers. So you can't necessarily like Oh, I can argue, hey, I need to start at a higher level tier so I get a higher payload, right? Oh, but that comes with responsibilities and it comes with associated background, like requirements and stuff that they expect. Or alternatively, it's like, hey, we can take and we can relocate, right? Or we can take and we can put you in an interesting division. Or we can take and we can give you a better signing on. Or we can take and we can give you the option to go to conferences. There are a bunch of different like kind of ancillary benefits to working at Microsoft that are useful to you. All right. So there are a bunch of ancillary benefits that are actually useful to you while you're trying to negotiate with Microsoft. And so it would actually be useful for you to kind of have an understanding of those and have an idea for what you can actually accomplish with those, to the end that you will be able to articulate them during a discussion. So if you say, hey, I feel like this compensation package isn't necessarily good, or isn't necessarily comparable to other industry standards, but I saw that you guys go to Grace Hopper every year, right? It's like, I would really like the opportunity to be able to increase my social networking and increase my professional networking at this conference. So why don't you let me go there, or something like that. And all of a sudden you're able to hopefully get to the point where you can agree on a alternative benefit that you'd be able to actually use. And at the same time, the recruiter, absolutely happy to do that, right? It's just a spot on the queue for them. So very little problems there. They don't have to actually increase your compensation, so they aren't violating any of their internal policies. At the same time, they aren't really making anyone else have to do much for you. No one's shifting anything around, changing any department or anything. And yet, both of you are getting more. You feel like the package is better. They feel like they got a recruit, and they're happy because they get to spend less time on it. And so everyone walks away better. So some passing thoughts on this. Negotiation is really a conversation. You're going in and you are trying to better understand the other person. You're trying to kind of reach a shared goal. And if you go at it like that, I think you'll find that you're really not trying to trick someone. I think a lot of movies and stuff are people trying to take and trick you into doing X, Y, Z, or they're trying to like steal your money away to give you a junk car, or they're trying to, I don't know, do this or take that from you without giving you your fair due. In reality, though, most people are kind of just not that malicious, or at least not that smart to be able to pull that off. So if you instead look at it as instead of, oh, this mean car dealership guy is going to sell me a lemon, you said, hey, this guy does this for a living. He kind of enjoys selling cars. He's trying to sell cars, he's trying to get a quote, right? He doesn't necessarily like care how much or how high it is above an MSRP beyond a certain point. He'd much rather have a sale than this, right? Or you're trying to like contextualize his position so that you can actually take and do something with that. You also need to think of alternative options, like we said before, so that you can actually bring stuff to the negotiating table and offer things. And then know your needs, so know yourself and know where you stand. And then, yeah, don't get held hostage, because nobody likes being held hostage. This reminds me, I actually think I am missing a video that I wanted to edit. Let's see. What is that called?
Oh, here we go.
Or the, there we go.
Who are you? Rick, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Right over there. Merry Christmas. Leave it alone! Leave it alone! Leave it alone! Why are you doing this? None of your goddamn business! Fair enough, look, I'm just gonna come out there, okay? No, you touch me up and go! Look, take it easy! No, take it easy! I don't like to take that I'm scared too, okay? Calm down. Just want to talk, okay? Just want to talk. I'm just gonna stand out here and wait for you. No, don't go. I don't know, Mitch. You know, you're not the first guy to think of this, you know? A lot of people have got problems, especially during the silly season like now. You don't shit! Oh, you're wrong, pal, you're wrong. You don't know about this, don't touch me! Take it easy. Look, I didn't do anything wrong. I know that, it's not guy, my boss is down there, and he's watching this thing. I don't think it's what I'm trying to say here, okay? Come on. I'm just gonna stand here and talk to you. That's all. You won't try nothing? No, I'm square with you. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it. You think I want to fall out? I promise I'll just talk to you. Okay. Here, you want a cigarette? Come on, let's smoke, okay? Come on, take it. Yeah. We're gonna take our time to hold back. What are you doing? Take your key. Bye-bye. You're crazy! Now you can jump if you want, but you'll be taking me with you unless it's your murder. Okay? Yeah, you're still a cop. Yeah, I'm psycho, but I'm still a cop. You coming in? Come on, go in. Fuck you! I'm jumping! Do you really want to jump? Take a run. On the next spot. Come on. Let's do it. Let's do it. I want to do it.
No, let's not watch this. Just saying. But yeah, so that's a good example of a guy who has like nothing to lose, right? And he knows that, so he killed. But yeah, so hopefully you won't find yourself in a situation that that you will need to hostile negotiate. But at the same time, I would like to open the floor for examples you guys might have of times where you have taken the opportunity to negotiate some, or a time that you figured out a thing that you could offer, or a different way of approaching a situation that you think you'd like to share with the group. Yeah, does anyone have anything that comes off the top of their head? Jim?
I got a failed negotiation for you.
Sure.
So my friend and my father purchased a car together a couple of years ago. It turns out this friend wasn't such a good friend. She ended up ditching us. So my dad got stuck with the car. But let's go back to the negotiation of the car and see why, if he had listened to me, he wouldn't be so screwed. So I bought a car with my mother in 2010 for $12,000 and some change. And this car is a better version of the one that my father purchased with my friend. Okay? The one that my father purchased with my friend is an SE model. Mine is an SES. Has all the computer. You guys have heard me talk to my car and stuff. And this one was just plain old regular car stock for the most part. And so the difference was this one also smelled like smoke. It was missing some little plastic pieces inside. Bad car. They paid $2,000 more 2 years later for this car than I paid for mine. So when I told him, I said, Dad, 2 years ago I paid for a better car for $2,000 less. My father said, don't listen, you don't know what you're talking about. And then about a year ago I said, Dad, if you had listened to me, you wouldn't be in this position. And he said, yeah, you're right. And I was like, I can't believe he admitted it. So it doesn't matter who you are or what your credit score is, the price of a car is still the price of a car. That's what it comes down to. You're welcome. I thought you'd think it was funny. It might not have a real moral or anything other than listen to me, but.
Have you guys ever like gone to like flea markets and stuff? Because like I would always bows and arrows were this thing I would always buy. So like I would buy a bow and arrow, but it was great because like you're a little kid going up and you're just like, hi, I'd like to buy this bow and arrow. And it's like, where's your dad? And like you go look over at my dad, and they try to start talking to him. And I'm like, no. It's like I got money. But it's really fun because, like, I don't know. I think it kind of surprised them that you'd actually do that. But I think flea markets are one of the last places where you can, like, pretty reliably haggle for things. I think I tried at the farmer's market. I walked up at the end of the day and I said, hey, are you gonna like sell those waffles still? They're like, eh. I'm like, I'll give you $1 for 2 of them. And I think the girl was frustrated at that, but she said no. But I will get it eventually. Because again, it's like, extra buck for them, waffles for me, but whatever. So, yeah.
So I want you guys' feedback on this one. Kind of a failed negotiation. I went to, so this is like during the break, right before school. I guess it was end of summer, coming to school. We need a new car, right? So I go to the Honda dealership, and we want to pick up like kind of a relatively cheap car on lease. So I'm driving all these cars in a lot, and then at the end of the day, like it was kind of a rushed decision because it's the first time I actually went in there and drove any cars. So I didn't want to actually like settle on something right now. So I'm talking to my mom like in private, and I was like, hey, like, why don't we just like say no to these guys now and come back later. So that's what we're gonna do. And then we talked to the manager or the guy that was working with us. We told him that he's like, all right, meet my manager. So the manager comes in and like super condescendingly is like, oh, so which one of you is the lucky guy here? I was with my brother also. So, oh, is it you? So you like the car? I'm like, it's all right. It's all right. What do you mean it's all right? You were driving it around. You like the car? I'm like, it's good. Then he like walks around the table, sits down, he's like, so you know, what do you think? Do you like it? Tell me. Like he kept asking this one question. I'm like, it was fine. Like, oh, I guess I can't do anything for you. It's not your favorite car, and he gets so confused. Like that. Like no exaggeration.
Oh my god.
Like what the fuck? What was I supposed to do there? So like, if it was you guys, how would you have played this dude? Like, what the hell is he even thinking? Like what the fuck?
I would have just been like, you're right, you can't help me. It wasn't my favorite car. I'm gonna go buy my favorite car next door.
I mean, I feel like if I had been maybe more like enthusiastic about the car, maybe he would have felt like I wanted to help me out or something. I feel like I probably could have gotten a discount on it, but.
But I feel like this guy's trying to play you for like a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
I feel like this guy is like the first kid buying a car. Like, if I just daze this guy, just like get him off of whatever it is that he wants to say, like, he'll just make a snap decision.
One of the folks I went to actually, so this guy would not have failed for this problem. But a guy goes to go buy a Jeep, and he's done a bunch of negotiation before. He does a bunch of real estate stuff, so he decided to play a game. He said, okay, so I am going to say no words for as long as I possibly can without actually being like outright disrespectful to this guy. So he walks up and he says, and so he looks at this like bright red Jeep, and he just starts walking around, kind of looking at it, and sure enough, the sales guy comes up and says, hey, yeah, so see the car, right? How's it going? How's your day going? He just kind of sits and kind of keeps circling the car, just looking at it. And the car salesman starts to sweat a little bit. He's like, okay, yeah, so this is a really, really nice car. It's great. It doesn't have many miles on it. It was owned by a grandmother who stayed home with her cats all the time and only left on the second Thursday of the month to get cat food, so you don't have to worry about just all that stuff, right? Trying to sweeten them up. And it says, yeah, okay, so I can tell that you're a guy who knows their cars, since you still like examining stuff. Says, yeah, so why don't I give you a deal on this car? So he like lowers the price a little bit, and then he goes, okay, so and he doesn't talk, but he just like kind of acknowledges it, right? He keeps moving around. They kind of start staring at the tires, and the guy says, oh yeah, you know what? We have a deal with the tire sales guys down the street. So why don't we get you a brand new set of tires, and we can go ahead and throw in snow chains for that. He's just kind of going around, and it's like, all right, so yeah, I guess you kind of figured it out by now, but yeah, this car actually was flooded. It was brought up from Louisiana during the last hurricane. So if you want it, we'll sell it to you for like this. And so it turned out that the whole car would be flooded, which, if you don't know, means it's effectively like total, like it's probably rusty, the entire thing inside. But the fact that the guy didn't say anything and let the guy like talk himself into a hole, kind of so it was just funny you saying that, because like that would not have worked on this guy. Say,
yeah,
sorry. And I guess it's interesting, like what industries are there where you can't actually have that amount of discerning in which customers you take, right? I think auctions are a good example of that, but other cases where it's like selling this car now is not as important. I'd wait for a better deal. I guess it depends on like volume and stuff, but no, it's just funny. And I always have looked for like the time where I can go do that and just kind of like wander around, look casually interested in something, but I don't know, it hasn't happened yet. So.
That's fun.
Dan said that he got drunk.
Oh, no.
Oh, because you logged out.
Eh.
Darn.
Oh, weird. All
I mean,
right.
that makes sense though.
Authentication required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure that's off the screen though. Hopefully, type a fake thing.
Fake
No, I just want to make sure that it doesn't actually show the letters of the password because I'm sure there's at least one person in the room that can memorize it.
I couldn't
That's not.
You
Uh,
there were like 3, 4 numbers in a row. What was it again? Actually, did you see the? I was so loud when I was thinking that like, the resistors and password I used, but I couldn't remember to go over and pick it up, so I wrote it in my hand, and then I wrote like,
yeah. Well, while this is going, Jeff's going to say.
Yeah, this is just sort of a fun sort of like the sort of market negotiation in China when I went. The friends, family I was with, they spoke a dialect that was kind of rarer, one of the rarer ones. So whenever we'd go shopping at a place, we went through some of the places like just the streets with the market of various souvenirs and whatever. So we walked through and what we did is we found something I would like, and then I would look and then I just keep walking. And then a few minutes later, they would come as a group and start negotiating. But then what they would do is every time while they were talking, anytime there was deliberation, they'd just turn to each other and speak in the dialect that they couldn't understand. And so it was very interesting to hear stories afterwards where they'd go say one thing, and then in their entire side negotiation, it would be, yeah, it's actually a pretty good price to see if we can get it lower and all this stuff like that. It was just kind of amusing hearing some of this stuff. And the funniest one I had to think was they walked out on it, and the lady from the stand actually left the stand and chased after them to try to get them to make the deal. It was it's kind of amusing.
It was really interesting because they told us when we were on a cruise ship, we was talking about Jamaica. But it was interesting because they said that oftentimes the people manning stands and stuff by the beach, they'll try to do some endearing thing. So they'll either offer you tea or they'll try to get inside, or they'll take it oh, can you translate this real quick for me?
Yes.
Because you're English and all that stuff. And it's really interesting that it said that. It's been studies been done that show hey, if you kind of make that initial bond, then you're far more likely to actually sustain for a final sell.
Yeah, that's the reason why a lot of homeless people, when asking for money, will go first and say, "Can I ask you a question?" That's where that comes from, because once you agree to something, that's right. The studies go through and show that you're much more likely to help somebody or go with them because you've already helped them. So the cognitive dissonance stuff starts triggering in, and you're already viewing them as somebody to help. So just as a thing to notice, if you always wonder why they're specifically that, or else they make sure to ask that first without just the monies, because that actually really increases the chance that you'll give them something. Yeah.
I don't know. Most people usually come up to me I got $1 and I know.
Yeah. Those are the bad ones. Those ones without much going on.
Or you were in New York City, it would be yeah, I actually missed my bus to Boston.
Yep.
I have $16.33. Can you give me the rest of the $4 I need for my bus?
Yeah.
For some reason, they really carry the same bus for yours. You see, because I've been to Penn Station
Yep.
5 times and was banned for 2 weeks, and I think the same person asking the same question.
I think that the one time I did give someone money because I loved the story enough was they ran up and they were dressed in full tops and stuff I need this money to get the bus to my interview. I'm like, okay, kid, here you can have the money. It's a good story. I'll give you $2 for that just because you went the effort to get me.
I think there have been a couple of interesting high-profile, not cases necessarily, but opinions that say you should kind of ban salary negotiation, almost because the fact that women, and especially minorities, have a harder time and historically don't negotiate much. Their argument is, hey, you shouldn't allow negotiation because it's discrimination by proxy or something like that. I don't really have an agree with it, but it was interesting that was something that people were discussing. But aren't there a couple of I think there's just a couple of businesses that have either made all their salaries public to try to help negotiation go smoothly, because it's you get this offer and everybody knows you have this offer and you're not really negotiating because we just don't let that happen. It was just kind of odd. Yeah.
So what is the most effective form of negotiation you've experienced firsthand?
got many, many thousands of dollars from RPI for just sending in a letter. I sent in a letter and I said, Carnegie Mellon, let me go there for this. And there's no reason you cannot match that. And so, effectively, I sent that letter to WPI, I sent that to RPI, I sent that to Case Western Reserve University. All three got back and actually responded to it. Case Western says, no, we can't give you more, but we consider applying for this scholarship, which I did, and I got to final round for it. And then RPI gave me, I think a couple grand a year, and then same thing with WPI. It was really interesting because it's kind of fun, and like I would never have thought to have done it, but I'd actually talked to a couple of college recruiters, and they were like, yeah, pretty much we're allowed to do that. And especially the fact that I had so many other colleges. It's like I could just list off. Like I got into all of these colleges. All of them now pay me more than you. What? Discuss, right? so that was pretty fun. I think the other, I guess the other fun story. I don't know. I assume most of you have heard it, but I took for my freshman year internships. I only really bothered to send letters to CEOs. So I sent 2 letters out to 2 companies I was interested in, one robotics and one mechanical engineering, like manufacturing, because I was mechanical at the time. And both of them got back and offered me jobs. So I spent like no time. And then, I guess beyond that, I guess it's really hard because like those are the cases where the negotiation actually helped me quite a bit, because that's numerous thousands of dollars from college that effectively like got wiped away with no effort. So that would be the case of me personally doing negotiation best. Trying to think of, oh man, yeah. So it's also funny because you can see people who really, really don't care about human rights doing negotiations. I think a good example of that is so we got Iran's it was Iran. Yeah, our embassy got overrun. We tried to rescue black helicopters in the 80s and it didn't work. And, all that stuff. But when the similar thing happened with Russia, I think they took and they, one of the hostages was shot. They had 4 from some embassy that they were holding, and they were like some fringe like Muslim jihadist group. And so they took and they effectively went to the ambassador and said, hey, it'd really, really be a shame if during our tests that are scheduled next week, we accidentally forgot and put on a nuclear warhead and accidentally like shot it off in just the wrong direction. You'd be really sorry about it, that'd be pretty bad. So they effectively like threatened the chancellor. And then they went to the religious leader and they said something just, they like honestly like demeaned him, and like no one ever talks to like the mullah that way in Iran. And they said, yeah, it'd really, really be bad if we just effectively like just couldn't buy any oil from you anymore. That'd be really, really bad. So they effectively threatened that. And then they took and they actually found out the guys who did the hostage taking, and they mailed a couple of shall we say, personal effects via mail of the brother of the head guy who did the kidnapping. So they effectively killed his brother. And they said, oh yeah, and here are the here are the like addresses of the other people that we know you're related to. And then pretty much, yeah, like the next day they kind of just showed up at some other embassy, were dropped off and sent to the hospital, and it was fine. But, so it's just kind of funny because like they don't really care, so they'll just do whatever.
Who was in that, Russia, you said?
What?
Who was negotiating that?
Russia, KGB, I believe.
KGB doesn't get a single one.
Well, that was great. So it was just like, I don't know. But you kind of wish at times where you were like given that much license, but not really because it's just awful. But, I don't know. So I ask back to you.
Intense.
Okay. You can think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say a hobo thing, part fail, part success for this whole thing. When you love, you can see the jobs Slack channel. I've been basically posting that whole process live.
Real time updates.
So I think I definitely think being able to be in a position where I had no job offers and paying $1,300 a month and still be able to tell them this offer isn't enough I was pretty proud I was able to do that, because usually I'm not super duper good at negotiating. But But I think definitely what would help me is to really understand the situation a little more before I started the process, because I went to them at about the same time I started the job process, having pretty high confidence that I knew I would be able to get through that process really, really easy with like no chance of failure. But I let my parents convince me that it was dangerous to do so and that I should be worried about not getting a job. And so I went through that at the same time, and then ended up the situation where I was able to negotiate and get the thing up, but I got stuck in the situation where I only had 3 or 4 days. I think it was 3 days from now, 4 days from yesterday to make the decision, and it's just like, well,
it's just always amazing how much people don't realize that like once a recruiter's gotten you to like here's an offer, like they just want to be done.
yup.
Like I'm just happy to like deal with it, right? And it's just always kind of weird. But I don't know, there are a lot of cases where yeah, people just don't need to negotiate or people aren't confident and having that confidence is great. I think I'm still like the only person I know who actually negotiated like college game. I don't know. That's just me. But I assume you did. I don't know. Did you?
Oh, well, yeah, of course. I mean, I just had like a simple, like, I don't know if a drag neg of like, hey, RPI, like, I appreciate your offer, but like, if I'm actually supposed to come here, this isn't going to work.
Good enough.
And then they literally gave me, I don't even remember, I think it was actually like,
Large number.
like 18,000 a semester. Like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
it was effectively,
Oh my God,
they
if I
college
had college, it would be
expense,
so
like, in less than half. Like, it was so retarded. Like, yeah, essentially it is. And I was like, it's so retarded. Like, it was like the best, because like, I couldn't even imagine, like, paying what the initial thing was.
I always joke that if I like was administrator for college, I would like just fail everybody and say no one gets into my college until people fail or people negotiate. Because the fact that you actually bother to negotiate is like, hey, this person's actually not a vegetable.
It's public.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that there's such a taboo among these things, and it completely just helps the person who's on the other side. Like, job offers and like financial aid and all that. Yeah, you don't really want to go broadcasting it, but the fact you do not know what other people are getting,
Well, that's a
such
whole.
a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's the whole information is interesting, right? And I think I've like yelled a lot at a couple of you for not immediately Glassdoor would ever offer you're ever given, right? It's like you need to immediately find out what other people
Yeah,
do.
Glassdoor is, I did Glassdoor.
But no, it's just yeah. It's like, great information.
That's like,
So, yeah, because I don't think we really, no one ever talks about who got what aid, because it's just not generally a thing. But, oh well. Yeah. All right. Do you have something?
Yeah, I had one. So I bought my car, and I used emotion to get what I want. Yeah. So basically, it came down to 2 cars. So I was buying a car in Annapolis, in Virginia or whatever, and it came down to 2 cars, 2 CRVs, and I was like, okay, cool. So they were priced around like 13 or something. And so one of them was older, one of them was newer, so it was like 2009 versus 2007. And so I asked the guy, I was like, okay, so they both come with like warranties, right? And he's like, yeah, they both come with like 2-year warranty, or not 2-year warranties, like 6-month warranties, you know, things like that. And I was like, okay, cool, because I really wanted a warranty because I had like car trouble before, and I was like, God damn it, fuck cars, like I need a warranty, you know? So we went through, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go with the older one since it's a little bit, you know, less pricey. And the sales guy was like, so yeah, I was like, okay, so it comes with that 6-month warranty, right? And he's like, yeah. So, you know, he goes back to the, you know, the boss at the, you know, in the back classroom, whatever. And he comes back and he's like, hey, you know that offer, you know that warranty, it was only for the other car. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? No warranty? And he's like, no, there's like a 1-month warranty. I was like, this is bullshit. What the fuck? You just told me it was a 6-month warranty. And so basically, he's like, oh, no. So he panicked, of course. So he went back, got his, you know, his boss, and he came over, you know, and he was just like, I'm so sorry. And he was like standing there, like, you know. But anyway, basically what happened was, yeah, so he got fucked up. He screwed up. And basically, he was like, yeah, so we got this other warranty. It's a 2-year warranty, but you know, it'll cost a little extra. It's like $2,000. And I was like, what the fuck, man? He just fucking told me that I get a 6-month goddamn warranty. You know, so I blew up, and I never blow up, by the way, if you guys didn't know that. But yeah, like I was angry, so I fucking like stood up and I got everyone's attention. I was like, "What the fuck, man? You just lied to me." Yeah, and basically I was able to negotiate them down to give me a free 2-year warranty. So.
This highlights your rule. Never get emotional.
I said there were some caveats.
Oh, okay.
So I got a free 2-year warranty.
I love that. Yeah,
I
it's not like
feel like calling somebody a liar inside a car dealership is a pretty good way.
Oh my god. You're right. Oh my god.
It was bad.
Shout out, give a free warranty.
It was bad.
That's really hilarious.
No, it's always funny when like when someone gets ripped off by a car dealership or like the sold one, and yeah, there's a warranty or whatever, and they get them and their kids to go stand outside of the like car dealership with little signs saying like, "We got ripped off." It's just like, that's a great way of getting all of your problems sorted out because yeah, no one wants to see that. But, so yeah, cool stuff. Anything else to add?
When I was in 8th grade, I sold a quarter for $5.
You sold the quarter for how much?
For $5.
It's like a
All right, it was a state quarter.
Okay.
And I had these kids bidding for it. It's great.
Oh my god, you were like, this state.
This is like this is just like a new minted coin. Like you guys all fine. Yeah, it's bad.
That's so funny. And when the teacher found out,
I got to keep my mom gave me that
Excellent.
Golden Eagles. Golden Eagles were right before the Great Depression. They decided to come off the gold standard. They minted actually bullion coins that were like $1. What was interesting is some guy decided to take and steal like 20 of them before they went back to get melted down after we were off the gold standard. So there are only like 2 in private collections right now in the Smithsonian. And then this post office box had a bunch of them that were discovered. But what was funny is the guys go and they said, okay, are these like real gold eagles? Because they just found them like 20 or 12 years ago or whatever. And they go and they say, you know what? You know the people who could actually authenticate whether or not these are gold eagles? The U.S. Treasury. So they just walked up to the Treasury and they said, okay, hey, can you figure out if these are actual gold eagles? Because they'd be worth a lot of money. And the Treasury said, yes, and thank you for returning our stolen goods. And confiscated them.
Yep.
And dumped them down. So,
here's $12 for your trouble.
and they went and sued them, but it was like, no, it was like they were stolen goods and they were brought back to the Treasury. So it's just so funny because, man, you have millions of dollars that didn't actually go to the Treasury. They screwed up. So. All right. So that's all I got. Unless anyone has other stuff. You good? All right. Thanks.